Bill here with me today. We're going to talk about some stuff. Actually, he's got some notes, and we're going to talk about those. Go for it, buddy.
Well, one of the things I've been thinking about, we talked last time about believers and knowers when it comes to Bigfoot, and we've been talking a lot about videos, and there's some great video evidence, but there's other types of evidence that I feel like it gets overlooked. A lot of different evidence. There's obviously, we have eyewitness accounts. Now, an eyewitness account is enough to put someone in prison in the right circumstances.
Right.
But in this case, it's forgotten about. We have sounds. I'm sure you're familiar with the Sierra sounds.
Yes.
Okay. They say that a person can't do that. The vocal range is too high and also too low. So what did it? What did it? Yeah. We've got tracks, and of course, even if 95% of those tracks are faked, you've got Terry Crew finding tracks. Was at 1957 in the middle of nowhere. Why would he go through the trouble to fake tracks in the snow that could have got covered up on the brief chance that one of those loggers was going to come shut equipment down?
Right.
It doesn't make sense. We've got structures. You've got nests. Where a person can't do a lot of that. I know when Les Stroud was up in Alberta with Todd Standing, they looked at a lot of those. The butt of the tree swinging up in the air,
Yep.
A person can't do that. Why would a person do that in hopes that maybe one day somebody might come by and see it?
Yeah, that's the part that blows my mind is that they say that's a hoax and such, but it's so far out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Why would anybody go to that length, to that far out, with extremely slim chance of anybody ever seeing it and make the hoax? You'd think that the hoax would be in an area where it could be seen.
Right. What's the point in making the hoax if no one's going to see it?
Yeah.
And the trouble it would take it's not like, you and I stomp out into the woods and throw some tree branches up. I mean, these are full on heavy trees, logs, and they're suspended in the air. Without a crane, I don't see how you could even hoax it, to be honest, with some of them. With the nesting, the way they're woven together. Now, a person could probably do that. I don't know why. Again, most of them don't look like a structure. It's not like you're going to walk by and say, oh, there's a Bigfoot nest. If you didn't know what you were looking for, you'd walk right past it.
Exactly.
Just look like a thicket or a brindle brush. You would just walk past it. So it's not like it's glaring, I'm going to fool you into thinking this is a Bigfoot.
Right.
So to me, those are things that are just as much proof as anything.
Yeah.
Again, we've already covered in 3 minutes here enough evidence that we could show, tangible evidence that we could show, that could put someone in prison.
Yeah.
Just with that evidence we've covered right here. A quick footprint, an eyewitness account of audio recording, and visual proof of where the person was, you're done.
Right.
But and I was noticing too as I was looking through the evidence, because I wanted to know what is the evidence that's out there. We were talking about so much nonsense earlier. What evidence is out there that is less likely hoaxed or can rule out as not hoaxed? And what I noticed, a lot of the people, that are saying, I've seen it, I know it's there, I know where they are. These are people that live in the bush. These are people that are out in the wild. And the people that are going, they don't exist. These are guys on their recliner, watching television. They're not out there looking for it, but they're certain it's not out there. Oh, I know. I just know it's not out there. But the guys that are out there are saying something different.
To expand on it a little bit, there's also people today. Now, think about this. There's people today that say the earth is flat. They still say the earth is flat. Yep. Now, I've been in an airplane, I've been in helicopters in Vietnam, and jets, all kinds of different aircraft, and I've been high enough, flown to Florida and to California and different things, and I have seen the contour of the earth. It is not flat.
No.
And so the naysayers have a negative frame of mind that they say this just doesn't exist because they don't believe it, and they're not putting any evidence out to support it. Now, that's proof enough for me to discount most of what they say.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, a person that's saying that I saw it with my own eyes, would tend to be either hallucinating or actually saw the thing or lying.
Well, yeah.
So if you're going to count him as a liar, well, then you just walk away from him and don't talk to him. If he's hallucinating, get him some help. And the rest of it just falls in place.
The rest of it falls right in place.
You mentioned a minute ago, there's certain things that just can't be done without a crane and such.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some exceptions to those things. So I want to be the devil's advocate in that respect, to acknowledge that there are some things that can be hoaxed that look very real. In fact, I saw a video just yesterday that they found a primate skull in Canada. And after watching about 30 minutes of the first hour show, and then the second show was about the conclusion of what they determined this was.
I love a good cliffhanger.
Yeah. and so the second video was covering a lot of the things that they said to start with. So I just kind of did a lot of fast forward 5 seconds at a time and did that until I got up to where they actually discovered the skull. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm pretty much convinced that it looks organic, that it's there. It was there and buried by some unfortunate landslide. And then at the end of this video show that, well, no, this is not a real skull. It's a movie prop. And they did it to show how things can be faked. And so it was extremely convincing to me in the very beginning when I saw it. So I shouldn't have believed it, to be honest with you, but I kind of suckered into that one.
I got suckered into one about mermaids one time. I'm not going to lie. They got me. I was about halfway through it, and I said, no, wait a minute. It was a very good mockumentary. And I think it was on National Geographic is what threw me about it.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Did you? It was well done.
Very well.
So, okay, I would like to bring a counter to your point there. Another thing I thought about when I was looking at evidence was, of course, what's our most right now. You and I are discussing a lot of video evidence,
right?
And of course, the most famous video evidence, the Patterson-Gimlin footage. And I looked at a breakdown of that yesterday, and it's been broken down ad nauseum. People just redoing it. You can fit it here, you can't fit it there. You can do this, you can't do that. But what kind of dawned on me over the weekend was, show me another piece of footage from 1967, Hollywood, anywhere you want, where you could pick it apart 60 years later and can't tell if that was a movie prop or a real person.
Exactly.
From an actual Hollywood film with a big budget. But these two guys on horses made a film with a handheld camera that 60 years later still stands up to scrutiny.
Right, exactly.
I still am on the fence with the Patterson-Gimlin footage. I want it to be real. It looks, you can see the muscles. I can't see a reason that it's not real. And I want to believe it's real.
Me
but
too.
I can't think of anything else. The movies that were big around that time, like any kind of prop you're looking at, that's a prop. There were no films coming out in the late 60s where you thought, oh my God, they got a real, whatever. Even in the 70s,
yeah.
Star Wars, as fantastic as it was, you knew Jabba the Hutt wasn't a real creature.
Exactly.
But Patty, there's no 100% evidence one way or the other, and I think that speaks volumes.
I do too, and of course it's hard to prove a negative.
Sure.
In either direction, but the like Bill was saying there, the movie thing. I remember when Star Trek came on, and I had been watching science fiction movies most of my life, and I said, "Wow, a science fiction movie that actually seems believable."
Mm.
Now, some 40 years or 50 years later, 60 years later.
Time flies when you're having fun, Cecil.
Yeah, just all of a sudden I realize how old I am. But anyways, now I look back on that and I can see, not really hokey, but how just not real that it looks.
Mm-hmm.
And the creatures, the monsters, the different aliens, not monsters so much as aliens, and different things were all, kind of good at the time, but you can see them now with the experience of CG that we have. You can see, wow, that's just not real by any shape or form.
It doesn't stand the test of time.
Does not. But yet the Patterson-Gimlin does stand it.
It does.
There is nothing about it that says point blank, this is fake.
Mm-hmm. There's been guys, that Bob Hieronymus guy said, I was the guy in the suit.
Yeah.
But he couldn't find the area in Bluff Creek to show them where he didn't know how to get there.
Right.
So you were there, but you don't know how to get there.
Right.
The same thing with my dad made the wooden footprints. My family. We and you can spend a lot of money on fake for whatever reason you would want to. I don't see. To me, the thought process of I want to make Bigfoot tracks and fool people. It doesn't compute with me.
It doesn't me either.
And a lot of times you can look at them and you can say, yep, that's fake. But there's good ones. There's real good ones. And they're going to fool me and they're going to fool you. But when they can fool Jeff Meldrum.
That's fooling something because he's an expert on primate footprints.
He has 3 PhDs.
Yes.
And he's a professor.
Yeah.
Why on earth would this guy come out in a field like this, risking the ridicule if he didn't believe it?
Exactly.
And his predecessors, you had Renata Hendon and John Green. They were all PhDs.
Yeah.
And they were also up there.
Yeah.
In the Pacific Northwest. They were seeing these things. And I mean, Jeff Meldrum can look at a foot and tell you how tall and what the thing weighed, what kind of diet it had. He can look at my foot and your foot and tell you if we're related in some way. And he's not fooled, but he's a believer in some of the tracks that he has, including the Patterson-Gimlin tracks. To me, that says a lot. And I'm going to trust his word over Joe at Speedway who tells me he doesn't believe in Bigfoot. You know
exactly.
what I mean? This guy knows what he's talking about.
There's also the times where they said that this is a bear print. Okay. Now, the reality is some of them are.
Sure. The double print.
Yeah. Where they step their rear paw into where the front paw was, and therefore makes about a 14-inch long footprint.
That would be terrifying.
But it would be. I do not want to face a bear out there.
Mm-mm.
But anyways, the thing of it is that you can still see differences in that footprint from those that are purported to be real footprints.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And one of the things in the Todd Standing film show there that I saw were what's his name? The other guy,
Les Stroud.
Les Stroud.
Survivor Man.
Yes, I knew that, but I couldn't think of his name. But anyways, he was out there with him, and one of the things I saw was as this footprint led up to a log, it stepped over the log. And I've been out in the woods quite a bit and wooded areas and out back on the farm with my family and things like that. And I've just happened to notice how footprints work in the mud and in the dirt and things. And this guy showed where this footprint had dug kind of shallow on the heel and then deep on the ball of and toe of the foot, where he was putting more of the weight on him
on the instep,
on the instep to support his weight as he stepped over the log or hit he, whatever, and that's something that's like, I mean, that would take some serious ability to hoax that.
Serious ability and serious forethought. I mean, how much do you have to think, I have to put this amount of pressure here? Because if you don't do it just right, you're not going to recognize it as a footprint.
Exactly.
That's a lot of, for what? And hopes that the guy walks over at the right time and sees it.
Yeah.
Sees it. Because Todd did not point that out in that episode. Les found that.
Yeah.
I do believe.
I think you're right. And I've seen others similar to that. So where do we go from there? I mean, it's like, I'd love to have people calling in and asking us questions or telling us things. Mm-hmm. We'd love to get some real information. Now, if somebody can prove to me that he doesn't exist, I'll just shut the podcast off and go home.
Well, in that case, we'll start talking about aliens and UFOs.
And then I'll come back and start talking about aliens, because that's a whole new subject with me.
Yeah, well, we just had one. We just had one up in Alaska this week. They shut it down.
Yeah. And they don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, so it's about the size of a car.
Yeah, a small car, they said. And so what was it? Who knows? It did appear to be somewhat round and did not seem to be flitting around like you see a lot of UFOs. But that's just the most recent one that they've shown. But the Air Force or Navy military, one of them, has put out numerous videos of these tic-tac-shaped things in the air flying around, and jets trying to catch them and not able to. They have shown radar images where these things take 90-degree turns at 1,000 miles per hour or 600 even. For that matter, if they take a right turn at 50 miles per hour, they're going to have some headaches from banging into the windshield.
One of the pilots on the Tic Tac video, it was a naval pilot. His name is Jeffrey Favor. He was not the pilot that shot the video, but he was in that squadron, and you could hear him in the communications. He said they messed around with the thing for a while. He said, and you can watch Jeffrey Favor. You can watch his interviews. Jeremy Corbell has a film with him in it all about the Tic Tac video. It's very good to watch. You should check it out. And then give us a call and ask us about it.
I'll check it out too.
It's very good. So he said it was very interesting. The thing, is coming way up high. It's going down low. Yeah. The guys are excited, but you can tell this isn't, you can tell it's not the first time they've seen something out of the ordinary. Right. Like, they're very impressed with it, but it's not the first. You can tell it's not the first time. Now, what was the first time, according to him, he said at the end of the exercise, they can only be out there messing with the thing for so long.
Right.
So they go to their, I can't remember, cap point. Is that what it's called? Where there's the rally point, I guess. Cap point.
Yeah.
And when they got there, it was already there waiting for them.
Yeah.
So not only was it there and maneuvering well outside their capacity, it knew where they were going to go, and it beat them to it.
Right.
And
extremely fascinating.
Fascinating. And I know that's not what we're talking about today, but
well, actually, it can be, because there are those that claim Bigfoot is alien.
Oh yeah,
and that he also goes in between dimensions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we touched on that last week. That was really good. I was really into that.
That's a fascinating thing, and like I was talking about, the way the solar system and the atoms are made, they're representative of each other in the way they look, anyways. And I don't know if there's some force preventing things from passing through that space. If there's not, then it seems to me quite likely that things could go between matters. And like I pointed out then, the photons are physical matter, and they're going through glass, and glass is physical matter, and it just goes through it just like it's not there.
I don't think there's a force stopping that from happening. I think there's a force stopping us from being able to comprehend it happening.
I think there is. I think there is. I've got a lot of beliefs on that kind of thing, but I don't have a lot of supporting evidence to go with it, so I try to refrain from throwing out a lot myself. And so, of course, I don't have a lot of evidence for Bigfoot either, but getting back to what we're talking about, if these things are related to Bigfoot, Bigfoot's related to those, then it would explain, at least in part, why none has ever been found, because when they are done with what they're doing here, they just shift into another dimension or into a spaceship or some sort of vehicle that transports them, or are transported, I say telepathically, but kind of like the transport.
Like a teleport
System on the Star Trek. And they're working on that. They have actually done little things with that. And now I don't know if it's possible to actually transport a living being and have it alive and in the same shape when it goes to the next place or not. I'm not saying that that is what's going on, but if it is, then it would explain.
Yeah.
And, of course, that's potentially pretty wild stuff for everybody. But there's a lot out there that believe that that's exactly what's going on.
And that's a rabbit hole. I mean, perhaps it's a gray on one end of the teleport and it's a Bigfoot on the other end of the teleport. You know, I mean, that's a rabbit hole. You could go forever. Yeah. There's, like you say, there's a lot of speculation on the spiritual aspect, and I definitely think that that plays in. I just don't know how. My next point that I had here kind of ties all of those things together.
Go for it.
Not so far off from fantasy and folklore. People have talked, written down, and before they could write, they drew pictures in caves of both things: Bigfoots, Sasquatch, Yeti. Why do we have so many names? Because there's records and history of it all over the world, every continent. Same thing. They have alien type figures and stuff, you know, in old totems and Mayan paintings and things like that. That doesn't make sense. I think it all ties together somehow. But with the Bigfoot, I feel like we could talk about the natives. They treated it like, you know, of course, the forest brother. They're on their totems. They don't put mythical creatures on totems.
Right.
As far back as you want to go to, like, cavemen, they have like the Yeti, just a big hairy, that comes from somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, why? Why would a caveman, Neanderthal, or anyone in that time frame, whatever they're called, draw somebody like that doesn't fit anyone else that they know on the planet, and so forth? It just doesn't make sense that they would do that. And you were talking a moment ago about the different names, and of course, if you think about it, there's a large number of different tribal nations of American natives here, and they all spoke different languages. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, if we just go to today's time and talk about God, God says, I am, and others say God is Yahweh, and those are different names from different languages. That
Jehovah.
that all mean the same thing.
Same thing, right?
And just talking about that too, in the Bible it talks about oh gosh, I can't remember who the guy was, but anyways, was taken up into the sky and taken around and shown to different places and different things in apparently different times. Why would they talk about something like that in the Bible if it
Right.
wasn't at least remotely true? And of course, a lot of people pick on the Bible saying it's all false and everything too. But then, you have so much of the stuff that's in the Bible as today you can find evidence that those things existed.
And more all the time.
As more and more all the time. All the time you're finding new evidence.
They found the Oracle of Delphi was like a real thing. Like physically where it was.
Yeah.
I'm going to dip my toe in the biblical water for just a moment.
Sure.
While we're talking about that. We were talking about the earth being round, flat earthers and whatnot. In the book of Isaiah, it refers to the sphere of the earth, very specifically the sphere of the earth. So that was just one thing. And I thought also, 2,000 years ago, how did they know it was a sphere?
Exactly.
Exactly. And a lot of people ask me because, I walk around, I have a couple Bible verses tattooed on my arm. People ask me, how can I be interested in the UFO things and the Bigfoot things and still claim to be a Christian? And I'm not a Bible thumping Christian by any means, but I try to do what's right.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that until I read a passage in the New Testament, and it says, I am the shepherd and you are my flock. I have other sheep that are not of this flock. You don't know about them, but I am their shepherd too.
Yeah.
That pretty much opens up the door for just about anything.
Exactly.
I think what he's saying there, I don't think he was talking about any one thing specific. He's saying there's stuff that you don't know, and I'm in charge of that too.
Exactly.
And you're not going to figure it out.
and he said no one will know until the time of,
That's right.
of deliverance. And if you think about it, the message I've been getting from people is that the Bible says that the universe itself was created for mankind. Now, I don't read that in the Bible. I do read that the earth was created for mankind and then populated by God and so forth. So if that's true, then it was. All right. Well, then why would Orion be out there so far away that no one could see it, or the Andromeda string be so far out that no one can see it and be made for us here on Earth?
Right.
That doesn't make sense to me.
No.
And with that in mind, why wouldn't God make other creations and in other places, other parts of the universe?
Absolutely.
And
it's not because we were so perfect the first try.
yeah. No,
I'm done. They're good. I'm done.
Yeah. He said, they're done. All right. We want to send a big flood.
Yeah, we're going to flood them out.
We're going to flood them out and kill them all, except for a couple of guys, Noah and his family. And so, with that in mind, then you got all this evidence. All right. So now, going back to this Bible, it also says in Genesis that there were Nephilim in the world in those days.
Yep, there were giants in the earth in those days, not on, in the earth.
Yeah, that's true. It does say that, and I never did quite understand that completely. But anyways, there you go. You got giants, and you've got
Nephilim.
The Nephilim. You also have Gigantopithecus. You
Real creature.
You also have a famous one called Goliath.
Oh yeah,
that David slew with a rock. And
he was one of many.
Yeah.
He wasn't the only one. He was just the loudest one. There was a bunch of them.
Yeah. So with all that in mind, and how tall was Goliath? My impression he was 10 foot tall, but I don't know for sure. I think it was probably more like 7 or 8 feet, something like that. And So with that in mind, I've heard people say, "Oh yeah, like somebody could really kill somebody with a rock." Well, okay. While I'm not an expert at it, I decided I wanted to make a slingshot like David used.
Mm-hmm. The leather strap style.
Well, I didn't use that style, but I didn't use leather pouch and a strap. I just used cloth.
Okay.
Okay, and it works the same principle. And to be honest with you, I was pretty deadly with it.
Really?
Yes, and you can sling a rock with that sucker hard enough to smash all kinds of things. I did some of that myself and had a lot of fun with it as a teenager, and then decided to just put it down because it was okay. I figured out how to do it.
Yeah.
I didn't exactly master it, but I still got past the big question mark: can it be done?
Did you sling underhand?
Yeah.
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 I've seen some guys do an underhand and kind of a side.
Well, I did it
thing.
both ways.
Did you?
I did it both ways.
I'm not good with that sort of thing. I got to connect all the way.
and I also, just as a little tiny sidebar, I knew a guy that could flip marbles. Now you think about, you flip a marble with your thumb and it goes zing, and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, from 25 feet to 30 feet away, this guy could set that marble on his finger and flip it with his other hand, and that sucker would go bzzz, bam.
Wow.
Hit the garage wall. It sounded like a bullet hitting it. And I'm like, what in the world? And I saw this guy do it time after time after time. It was an old man who lived next door. But so you can't say things can't be done. I've seen it done.
I believe I was trying to find the exact number, and I'm not able to find it right now, but I want to say the amount of pressure it takes to crack a skull bone is minimal. I mean, it's not hundreds of pounds of pressure. It's like 10 to 20 or something like that.
Yeah.
So getting a good size projectile right in the center, that's going to do damage for sure.
Actually, my understanding was it hit him in one of the eyes.
Oh, even better.
In the eye socket. Yeah. And what a lot of folks don't know is that the bone behind the eye socket is weaker than the rest of the skull. And it, a rock goes in there and it can bust right into your brain easily. And so anyways, so those things are all things that we've talked about that seem illogical, but yet they're possible. Mm-hmm. And relating that to Bigfoot, Sasquatch, there's so many things about him that seems unlikely, but potentially still possible.
And when you put all that evidence together en masse, likely, I think, it goes from possibly to it's likely.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's so much.
Right.
There's so much. And even if you, I say this a lot, if we throw 90% of that in the trash, we're still left with a good amount of evidence that you can't explain.
Right. Shoot, if you think about how many sightings there have been in the United States, there's been tens of thousands of sightings. So let's just say there's 10,000, and you throw away 90% of that. 10% of 10,000 is what?
1,000.
Exactly. So that means 1,000 of them are totally impossible to debunk. Mm-hmm. No one can prove that they aren't real. So out of 1,000 sightings, even if one of them
only takes one,
even if only one is real, then it proves it, period. Mm-hmm. So you can't throw it away by throwing out percentages and saying, well, 90% of this stuff. And then I saw an article where it said the answer, the thing about Bigfoot has been answered. And then it goes in and it gives a headline like that, like it's definitive, it's been answered. Then it goes into the body of it. It says the majority of the footprints that are seen are probably bears. Mm-hmm. Well, we know some of them are, but they put out this caption of absolute proof. and then throw out probably in the body without any proof whatsoever that 100% of them are bear prints. None whatsoever. They don't even try to say it. They just say probably. And they don't even say probably all of them. They just say probably most of them.
Yeah.
See? So where's the proof that it's been answered? There is none.
It's clickbait. It's getting your attention, and I think the reason for it, I heard something pretty interesting, because I'm always wondering, why wouldn't we just, like, if it's there, why wouldn't we just say it and protect them?
Yeah.
You remember the spotted owl?
Yeah.
And when they went on the endangered list, all of these companies lost all of this property because they had to delegate so much area to this spotted owl.
Right.
How much more if we had a bipedal primate, intelligent?
Logging industries would grind to a halt.
Everything. National parks, everything.
National parks.
Eventually, they're not going to be able to keep it a secret forever.
Exactly.
But for now, if I'm the government and the majority of the country is going, oh, it's not real, they're doing my job for me. I don't have to protect it. I don't have to put it as an endangered species. I just tell the people that see it that they're crazy.
Yeah.
And that does, until one finally shows up. In that case, I'll address it.
Exactly.
Just like UFOs. You can only hide them so long, and then you got to change the name to a UAP.
Yeah.
Until they finally just show up, and you're like, okay. Which is what happened with that Tic Tac footage. It just showed up.
UAP. What's the P stand for?
Unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Yeah, okay. Unidentified aerial flying. 2 words that says the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenon, an object. Well, it was an object in the sky and made it phenomenon. So they changed the name to change the narrative,
right?
So that people would
100%.
say there's no such thing as UFOs. It's UAPs.
Yeah. And well, we don't know if it's this or we don't know if it's that. If you don't know what it is, then by nature it is a UFO, UAP, whatever you want to call it.
Exactly.
Because you don't know.
Because you don't know what it is. That's the interesting part about it is people are saying, I saw an unidentified flying object, and they say, how do you know it was a UFO? It was
unidentified. It was flying.
Was it a spaceship? I never said it was a spaceship. I said it's unidentified. If you knew it was a spaceship, you couldn't say unidentified.
That's right.
You have to say it was a spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to be truthful, that is. So, anyways, I'm still drawn back to footprints. The fact that Dr. Muldrum has more than one set of footprints that have dermal ridges on them. I forget the word they use, spools, spirals, etc. But anyways, the footprint has dermal ridges on it, indicating that it's from a live creature. Now, that can be duplicated by man. But boy, I'm going to tell you something. I'm something of an artist, and I could do that if I spent, say, all day on a footprint.
And to what end?
I could reproduce that. But I'm thinking that if I'm going to do that all day, why am I even going to bother?
Right.
And especially if nobody's going to see it.
Unless you, yeah.
So it doesn't seem likely that would be fake.
Cecil, do you know what the most common squirrel in Ohio is?
Yeah, I do, actually. We talked about that a while back, and it's a flying squirrel.
Yeah, you ever seen one?
No, not here. No, I have never seen one.
My answer when my wife asked me this was a gray squirrel.
Mine too.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, mine too.
If that right there tells you pretty much what you need to know.
Yeah, they're nocturnal. You're not going to see them.
You're not. You would. more common than every person listening to this can look outside right now and see a gray squirrel.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in Ohio, look outside, there's a squirrel. You see a flying squirrel, there's probably more of those out there than the gray squirrel that you're looking at right now.
Exactly.
And let that sink in when you're in the big forest. I watched a video of a guy walking down a trail. I think I saw this Thursday. I took a couple of days off work. I was ill earlier in the week. I'm better now. I'm on antibiotics and everything. So I did a lot of YouTubing. Guy's walking down a trail and he runs into a mountain lion cub or kitten or whatever it is. And he just kind of, claps his hands and the cub walks off. The guy kind of backs up. Well, then here comes mama. And he's backing up this trail and this cat's walking to him up the trail. Mm-hmm. And the cat just kind of slinks into the weeds and comes back out. That cat is there, but you cannot see it. Exactly. You cannot hear it. And when she comes out, she's not coming out where you're expecting her to be. And you just 10 feet away from the camera. This guy is freaking out, by the way. He was freaking out, by the way. And I think it followed him for a couple. Have you seen the video?
Yeah.
Oh, terrifying, terrifying. But what got me was this is an animal that's not endangered. There's a ton of mountain lions in L.A.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles County, tons of them. You don't ever see them, and it's there, and you still can't see it.
Exactly.
That's what gets me.
Yeah, and so with as populated as it is out there, and they extremely rarely ever see a mountain lion. Almost never. When it does, it makes the news.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen like 3 stories on the news about mountain lions having been seen out there. Now, I've seen a lot more about bears, but very few about mountain lions. Well, if mountain lion is animal savvy, or cat savvy, and can hide from everybody that well, all right, set that aside for a moment and think about what Bigfoot is purported to be, an intelligent primate, hominid that can think.
Opposable thumbs,
and lives in this wooded environment, forest, almost jungle-like, and there's purported Bigfoot-like creatures in Vietnam as well, in the jungle.
Orang pendek.
Well, the orang pendek.
Oh, that's Philippines.
Yeah, but in Vietnam, I heard them called rock apes.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay.
And the thing is, they'll throw a rock at you, and just like they do here, supposedly. Now, the other thing that was going on in the jungle in Vietnam was there were tigers, and people said, no, there's no tigers over there. But yet, one night, a tiger snuck up to the lions and attacked one of the guys that was on watch and took him out and killed him and ate him.
Whoa.
Okay. So that's something that doesn't exist over there, but yet killed a man and ate him. So you get all kinds of things over there that aren't supposed to exist.
Yeah.
The rock apes, I always thought when I was over there that they were talking about the North Koreans. And but they weren't. They were talking about Sasquatch-like creatures.
Did you have anybody give you firsthand account of seeing those while you were over there?
A couple of guys.
Really?
Yeah, a couple of guys. But, then,
there's so much else.
There's so much else going on. It's like I told many, many people through the years. In Vietnam, it was like this. It was either absolute, total, excruciating boredom or sheer terror, one or the other.
I don't like either one of those.
I didn't like either one of them myself. I wasn't real fond of that.
I would imagine not. You were talking about the tiger. I believe I would rather stumble upon a Bigfoot in the woods, a bear, anything besides a tiger.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
As terrifying as a mountain lion is, a tiger is 3 of those, and faster and stronger and deadlier and hungrier.
Yeah. And they're everywhere. I've seen stories where they have jumped into a living space. I'll call it a house, hutch actually, and roughly 7 or 8 feet up the wall, they have a gap between there and the roof, right? And the tiger leaped up through that hole, drug itself through, grabbed a hold of that, and it drug itself through, and actually took one of the people out of the hutch.
Oh my God, those things are brutal.
That was over in Africa, if I'm not mistaken, but it might have been India. But the whole point is that they're vicious and they're terrible, and they're extremely hard to see. And I watched another video where they were going through tall grass, riding an elephant, and you could see absolutely no sign of this creature whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, this dude is leaping from the ground up to the top of an elephant.
Wow.
And showed the video of it.
Wow.
So with that in mind, critters can do things that you just can't hardly believe. When you go back to talking about Bigfoot, what can he do? If he's real, what can he do? First of all, he can walk, he can grab a tree and hide behind it. He can turn sideways knowing that you can't see him as well. Mm-hmm. And he can throw rocks. He can go up and down hills.
He can survive in a climate where you can only visit.
Exactly. He can live there and totally survive in that thing.
Hot or cold.
Yeah.
Alaska, up in Canada, or down in Florida. The skunk ape. To me, the most bang for the buck as far as realistic places to hunt. If I had my druthers on where I was going to go hunt, I would go to the Everglades. Because Bigfoot in the Everglades is living large. They've got all they want to eat. There's nobody around to bother them.
Yeah.
They can hear someone coming miles away, because the only way to get back in there is with the big airboats. So they hear you coming a mile away. And there's huge boa constrictors and pythons and things that have been let loose, monkeys and that have just been let loose and living back there. And there were actually, and I think there still are, chimps in the Everglades that were once got loose during
and such.
Getting loose during hurricanes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, my father lived in Florida for a long time. I went down right after a hurricane one time. It threw me off. You always know there's gators around. You see them, you hear them, they're like squirrels here. Yeah. But what threw me off right after the hurricane is you would see them in Walmart parking lot. You would see them in the middle of the road. Something about the hurricane got them all confused on where they were supposed to be. Right. I can see how a migratory creature with weather patterns, they're migrating to stay in the warmer weather where the food is, and they find that habitat, be it way up in Alaska where nobody goes, or way down in the Everglades where nobody goes. Sure, there are stragglers everywhere else. There's alligators in Georgia, there's alligators in Alabama, but most of them, so I think a Bigfoot would be that same kind of way. They probably migrate. There are different ones here and there, but you're going to have clusters. And
I think you're.
Have you seen the map with the Bigfoot sightings versus the caverns underneath the ground?
Oh no, I haven't seen that.
It almost matches up perfectly.
Oh, okay.
So, they put the pins in the Bigfoot sightings, and then so you've got the caverns under the ground and inside the mountains, caves and whatnot. I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. But the map that has all of the caves, tunnels, caverns will lay out almost exactly the same as the Sasquatch encounter map.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that.
David Paulides' 411 Missing also fits the same description.
Oh, yeah.
And that brings me back to there were giants in the earth in those days.
Yeah. Well, and also to address that as well, Native Americans, some of them have legends of their beginnings coming from underneath the ground. Now, we don't know that that's where they actually originated, but with that in mind, you would assume that they were at least part-time underground dwellers at one point in history, or prehistory, if you will.
So one thing that I learned a little bit about was indigenous native people. And I want to be careful because I don't want to, there are so many different beliefs, and I don't want to state something incorrectly. I know my family is Cherokee. I know what they believe, but there are many other people I don't know what they believe. But every tribe, every nation has their own stories.
Right.
And their oral traditions. They're passed down within the tribe. What's interesting there is this nation or this tribe or even this group may not share with the group next to them. Even if they get along, we trade, we're friends, we even intermarry, but our Sasquatch stories are ours, and your Sasquatch stories are yours because that's my Sasquatch.
Right.
That's your Sasquatch. And again, I was talking about them putting them on the totems. If you do look, when you see a Sasquatch on a totem, it's usually down towards the bottom. And whatever's at the bottom is the most important thing. It's the closest to the earth,
Right.
So I find that interesting. It's that weird line between folklore and science, and you can't just chalk it up to nothing. I mean, they're protecting, just like we were talking about, our government is trying to protect their economic assets by not having to claim the land for this thing.
Yeah.
I think tribes have their own reason that they want that particular, and we might have different Sasquatches. Your tribe might have, Charlie the Sasquatch, and we might have Harry the Sasquatch over here.
Right.
You know what I mean? Almost like a mascot kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
But they're part of they're their neighbor. It's their cousin. It's their brother. Their forest brother. It's not a unicorn.
Exactly. And speaking of unicorns, do you know that one time they actually existed?
No.
Not in the form of a horse. It didn't look like a horse with a horn on its head. It looked a little bit more like a rhino, but it had a big horn on its head.
Okay.
And I read an article on that a while back. So it defies logic. But going back to the Native Americans, why would so many tribes, nations, have so many stories about something that's not real?
And consistent across the country.
Exactly.
Consistent stories.
Yeah. That just doesn't make sense that many people would facilitate that big of a lie for so long, for eons or hundreds of years through their traditions, and they take pride in learning the story as they grow up from the elders, and they take pride in learning it accurately and being able to speak it out loud in front of the council
correctly
and get it correct.
Why?
If it was fake, it wouldn't be happening.
That's right.
Wouldn't be happening.
You wouldn't spend half of your life learning about something because the stories that they're tying to it are different.
Yeah.
The structure is the same. Okay, Bigfoot's a guy, he's out there, he's a forest friend. How he affects with each tribe is different, but it's important to each single one, and the fact that it's there is the same.
Yeah.
The fact that it's there is the same.
Excuse me.
Makes good sense. I mean, you and I seem to have a lot in common, but we're very different people.
Yeah.
And the household you belong to and the household I belong to, yes, we're both men. Yes, we both have facial hair. We both have hair on our heads. But the way we conduct ourselves would be very different. I don't see why a Bigfoot would be any different. They're not all the same. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me, that there would be different areas or even different localities.
Yeah.
Not just big areas. But, again, I have to harp a little bit on this oration that the natives do and I have some Cherokee and Comanche in me, but I don't know anything about them from the family aspect, none whatsoever. But I've always been interested in this, and in their nationality, their history, what they've gone through. And plus, I read prehistoric novels, and now these novels, of course, the storyline in them is fiction. It's the characters are made up, the individuals are all completely made up from the minds of the author. But they take great care to tell no untruths about how things were in those days.
So it's like historically accurate historically accurate fiction.
Exactly.
Okay.
And based on archaeological evidence. Now, if you read one of these books and you put it down, or you haven't done really anything. But if you go to the back of that bad boy and you start reading the references, there'll be 2 or 3 pages of references, one after the other, all the way down the page of where they got their information from, where the copper mine was in Michigan, and a big slab of copper on a guy's chest. Well, of course, I'm sure that was a fictitious character, of course, but there was a slab of copper found in that area.
I see.
I had to get there somehow. It didn't float.
Right.
It's a little bit too heavy. So there's all of these things that I have read, I've learned, and they talk about Manitou, something like that. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. And screaming through the night, all right, and going from place to place and hearing the same thing, seeing the same thing, and some of the knocks that you hear and different noises they make and stuff like that. They don't talk an extensive amount about that, but they throw it in here and there based upon archaeological evidence and orational history that they get from the Native Americans from different places. Then you go out there and you see these, what are those things called? The engravings on a rock.
Like the megaliths?
Well, regardless of what you call them, the pictographs.
Pictographs, okay.
That are carved on the rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And you have different things. You have antelope, you have bears, you have coyotes carved on there, you have people carved on there, and you have strange things like big, hairy, ugly dude carved in there in some places. You have things like that look like a spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
You have figures that have like a large round thing around their head, not on top of their head, but around their head, sort of like a diving bell or maybe a spacesuit.
Mm-hmm.
And you see things drawn on there with other aspects like that look like a rocket taking off and flames coming out behind it. At least could be interpreted that way. And it'd be kind of hard to describe what they would be if they weren't that. And then you have the Thunderbird. And the Thunderbird, according to some people, was just a very large bird, larger than a condor, and made a lot of noise. Well, and there were maybe the phoenix, et cetera, et cetera. But I say, what was a Thunderbird? You've got pictures in Christ's time. It shows someone standing on a balcony and looking up into the sky, and in the sky there's this thing that looks remarkably like a UFO, flying saucer. So there's those things from back in those days. And you have some of that stuff engraved on the walls out in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And if any of that is true, and you take and apply it, and the rocket landed anywhere near these people, they would call it what? A thunder jet.
Sure.
They didn't know what a jet
Didn't know
was.
what a jet was. It's going to be a bird.
Some kind of a bird because it goes in the air.
Yep.
Some
Or a
kind of
dragon
fish.
breathing
Or a
fire.
dragon. Yeah. And then was it India that has the magic carpet, flying carpet?
Yep.
I mean, what in the world could that be?
Yep.
I heard about that as a child, and I always thought they were talking about a piece of carpet and flying through the air. It was a lot later that I figured out they couldn't have been talking about that. They had to be talking about UFOs or flying devices. It also talks about in Revelations about flying machines. And all these kind of different things. So it's like, well, something's odd about that because nobody is accepting it as reality.
Yeah.
Everybody says it's all a big hoax, mass hysteria, et cetera. Can you imagine 600 people seeing the same thing and saying that it was the same thing out of mass hysteria? I mean, have you ever been around people, for goodness sake? You can't get two people to agree on anything.
They
It's
won't.
right there in front of you.
That's right. That's right. You were. We briefly talked about the Thunderbird when we were talking last week about my time in Tennessee. I said I had never seen a Bigfoot, but I had seen some interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
So one morning, I was maybe 10 or 11 years old. This is one of my favorite stories. This was my crypto story. They got me going. I was walking from the house up to the barn. My aunt and uncle were already up at the barn. They were milking, and they had let me sleep in that morning. Now, when we would have a calf die or a cow die or something, generally we would kind of drag it off to the edge of the property. Nature takes care of it. It's gone in a week.
Yeah.
Usually. So we had drug a calf out to one section, and I happened to be passing through that area. I wasn't like going near it, but I was passing through that area on my way up to the barn. There's a big pond to one side and a road up on a ledge. So you're kind of in a bowl with a pond on one side. I was circling the pond, and I came up to a bird that was near that carcass that was eye level. This bird was looking me in my eye. Yeah. There were two other birds with it. They were not as big. They looked like a large turkey vulture maybe. Mm-hmm. But this one, now I was young. I could have been in shock a little bit. I may have magnified it a little bit. But I know that bird was on the ground, and we were eye to eye. Yeah. And when it flew off, I could feel, when the wings flapped, I could feel the wind off of it. And it was gone. I ran to the barn, told my family what had happened. My uncle said I had seen a condor. I said, really? In Tennessee? It's part of Tennessee I saw a condor. It was bigger than that. It was bulkier than that. This bird could have worn a jacket. I mean, it was a big, hardy bird. And so then, of course, the rest of that summer while I'm there, I'm like, well, what else is out here? What else is? Of course, I'm looking for that bird. Never did see it again, but I'm constantly looking.
Right.
We would hear bobcats, but of course, you're in the middle of 1,000 acres at night. You're not going to go searching when you're 12.
No. Or 22.
Or 20, that's right. There were a lot of things we heard, or I heard up there that I would have loved as an adult. Now I would love to be able to go back. We had guys had stills back there, so it's just not an area that you want to go wandering around as a young man. But I think because it was so my uncle had 580 acres. My grandfather had like 350 next to it. It's a lot of land, untouched. Bluff on the backside, caves, Indian artifacts, covering the whole 1,000 acres. Yeah. If I could go back right now and take you with me, we'd have a ball. We would have a ball. But in that setting, coming to learn about Lauren Coleman and all things that were cryptozoology and paranormal, and it was right here. It was right, like I could, I had just as good of a chance seeing a Bigfoot in my backyard as anybody at that point. And it fueled something in me that just, it It strengthens and it weakens, but it never goes away.
Yeah.
It's that chase.